First lesson I learned from Frank was a pretty big one. After being in his office for just a few weeks, I was working the weekend trying to impress the boss. And on Monday, Frank came in and looked at what I had labored over, and he took my tired little drawing, and he drug it across the table and into the trash. And the man literally said, "We need to listen to Daddy." And from that day on, I listened to Daddy. For all of us lads in the office, Frank showered us with time and responsibility. He allowed us our small authorities and our big mistakes. There will never be anyone from whom I learned more about architecture than Frank, or about life for that matter. He taught architecture by not talking architecture. History, theory, all of these things Frank studied and he knew. His buildings can attest to that. But he wasn't out to drop a name, to drop a fact, to drop an idea. The work did the talking. And that freed him up to focus on you. For years I listened. At the office, after I went out on my own, over cheeseburgers and beer at Adair's, and eventually over soup and water at Bill Bouquet. I still listen. He seemed to always be having a grand time of it all, wherever he was. He wouldn't quite have understood what all this fuss is about, but he would have been here, and he would have loved it, and we would have listened.
Bentley, that was great. We all have so many good memories of Frank Welch, and your words just brought back all those good memories. Thank you for sharing. Now, Wendell Burnette, a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, is an award-winning architect whose projects reflect many of the same key values as the late Frank Welch: space and light, context and place, organic materials that are carefully crafted, and respect for the environment and landscapes in which we live. Wendell studied at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture at Taliesin West, and is a former professor of practice at the Design School at Arizona State University. Over the years, he has traveled widely in Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas, which has strongly influenced his approach towards the practice of architecture and his view of the profession. Much like Frank Lloyd Wright and our own Frank Welch, design in harmony with its environment is always a goal of Wendell Burnette. Wendell's work has been featured in over 150 publications and has received prestigious awards, including a PA Design Award from Architecture, 3 Record House Awards from Architectural Record, and a National AIA Honor Award. Early in his career, Wendell collaborated with Will Bruder on the seminal design for the Phoenix Central Library, an original building that continues to have a positive impact in the quality of life in Phoenix. Wendell's own work has been exhibited at the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, and he is a laureate of the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Wendell was born in Tennessee, but Arizona is his home. Having studied and worked in the state for decades now, it is fair to say that Arizona has shaped Wendell's work. Unique in the American physical and social landscape, Arizona is a place that requires a certain temperament, a certain disposition if you decide to make it your home. I would even say that Arizona isn't an easy place to like, as it asks you to pay attention, to focus, and to look for nuances in its landscape. Now, my friends in the audience may remember that years ago, I worked in Arizona for several months, and I have to tell you, at first I didn't like the place at all. But in retrospect, the reason why I didn't like it is because I was looking for all the wrong things. I was looking for the visual excitement of cities and landscapes of elsewhere. And of course, I didn't find them. Over time, however, I learned to pay attention, to focus, to slow down, and yes, to look for nuances in the landscape. And then I got it. Arizona is a place where nature and light and space are distilled to their essence, with no crutches or excuses. And the architecture that best captures the place follows the same logic. An architecture of reduced palette, of essential materials, of permanence, and of economy of means that brings the occupant in step with the place. As we are about to see, Wendell's work is like that. And I quote him, "Architecture is a process of distillation." Wendell, we are so happy to have you here tonight. Please welcome Wendell Burnette for the 2022 Dallas Architecture Forum Frank Welch Memorial Lecture.
Thank you for that. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Some of you might remember I have been here before. It was December of 2007, and so I'm honored to be invited back again. So anyway, I got a lot of slides, and I'm gonna motor through this, but I won't say something on every slide, but it's a kind of a collection of work and process and how I think and what drives the work. This is, of course, the backyard of Taliesin West. On the right is a tent. We're all given the opportunity to build. And what I did, because I didn't have a lot of money, is it was a distillation of the standard issue 8x8 sheep herder's tent. I poured the slab to the shape of the tent. I put an anchor bolt in each corner. I took the pipe frame that you were given. I flattened it with a hammer, drilled a hole in each one, and that's how the tent was bolted to the slab. And then I had Velcro that would allow me to sleep under the stars on the right and get good air ventilation, and associated it with a special spot in the desert that nobody had built. And so it was this like super minimal, not like trying to say too much, but really doing something that is what was just quoted. So here, I forgot to turn on my clicker. So what I learned here the most is the spaces between. That was a really great thing. I try in most all of my work to walk between spaces, to never seal yourself up in a single air-conditioned volume. The desert is, as was just mentioned, it's a magical place, but it takes a while to fall in love with it. I went to school there. I interviewed with Mrs. Wright. I started a month after high school. I was there for 3 years. Left to go back to Nashville, Tennessee, where I was born and raised. Worked for an architect I had worked for in high school. And then I saw the work of Will Bruder. This is when postmodernism was reigning. And there was an article in Architecture Magazine, 1984, 2 pages on 3 Arizona architects. One of those was Bruder. I came out and met Bruder when I was taking an exam, and then a year later I called him again. I had to take one other thing, and he said he had just let go the 2 people in his office and he wanted to hire me. So I drove out here. Actually, the first time I ever came through Dallas-Fort Worth was driving from Nashville to New River, where Will had this studio. And then I had the opportunity, because it had just been vacated, to live in the dome in the desert, which is a house that I emulated when I was 13 and had gotten serious with the drafting table. Knew I wanted to be an architect when I was very young, but got serious when I was 13. This is the first project that I emulated because I used to hang out at the Nashville Public Library, and this spoke to me. Later, I ended up living there for a year or two, rent-free as long as I took care of it. Wrote a nice article that's posted when Paulo died called The Dome in the Desert. If you want to read it, it's a really great story. So I was with Will for 5 years, and we had the opportunity to go after the Phoenix Central Library, which was a kind of $1 billion bond initiative that was passed by Mayor Terry Goddard at the time. And they trusted these two guys in the lower right to do the Central Library for the fifth largest city in America. And I decided, okay, this kind of opportunity doesn't come along every day. And so I was really kind of ready to leave and hang my own shingle, but I decided to stay. And I spent 6 years on this building. That's all I did. And I was co-designer, project and field architect, and just won the 25-year award, which in my book is the top. And, you know, kind of was actually was on the site during construction, the entire period of construction. Although nights and weekends I was building this house. This is me before we got the library, building a model of my house, which was published in PA Young Architects. This was a little page of that publication. For those that don't know, this is airbrush. And these were the kind of first sketches looking at the project in section, and also a kind of constructional strategy of how to build on a narrow site that was split in half by an old road. And so we only landed the house where the site was previously disturbed. These monoliths rise out of the 25-foot slope, and you kind of drive in between and move up in between this house. It's 8-foot monoliths on the south, 4-foot monoliths on the north. It's Integra Masonry, which was invented by Superlight Block, the largest block company in the world in the 50s and 60s. It's the block that was invented by Superlight to not break the back of a mason. Later, they invent this Integra, which is no end cells, only a 2/3 height middle cell, reduces thermal wicking by 66%. It's post-tensioned with 7/16 inch diameter all-thread rod at the top of the walls. It allows you to do, you know, a single-stroke solution: structure, thermal envelope, exterior finish, interior finish, one material. And this is that material, and you can see it being post-tensioned here, or pumped with foam actually. And so this is, and I was the owner builder. I was topped out the last wall with the grout pump and the hose in my hand. And these are 3 generations of masons, the Hotstetlers, that had a side firm called Midnight Masonry. And we kind of did this nights and weekends with friends. And it was how I started my practice. It was my business card coming out of this hillside. It was on the cover of Architectural Record, was a Record House and Review and many other publications. This isn't my Porch. I wish it was. It was my cost estimator that had Porsches, and I had a Honda CRX, and it just wasn't going to do the trick. But luckily, it had this old 356 that he really wasn't done yet. Restoring, had been working on it for like 20 years. Anyway, they put the engine in it. We had it towed the night before the shoot, rolled it in. Yeah, I really want it now because, you know, it'd be nice to have. So all the formwork for the house was recycled into the interior partitions. The block is as cast out of the mold, so it's reflective in oblique light. It changes with the different times of the day. Sometimes it's silver, sometimes it's yellow in the morning, it's red in the evening. But sits on the street. There's a street porch. You drive into the house. So project around the corner, this was, I kind of launched my practice with the house, but the first project that allowed me to kind of leave Bruder's studio was this house, the Dialogue House, which is a dialogue between two volumes. The living volume is up here, and out in the landscape toward the big view is a pool volume that's half water, half terrace. And I like describing projects with my hands. I always have a narrative. I'm from the South. I tell a lot of stories. These are okay, this was early state-of-the-art renderings. I mean, these were state-of-the-art at the time. More like collage, which I actually kind of like. One idea was the apparent thinness of light would support the space, and the house would recede into the night sky. It was for two entrepreneurs that were never home except at night. And so there was this idea of the pool being at the extents of the site, and the real extents of the site was South Mountain, Sierra Australia. You were just above the city skyline, so it almost looked like a real city skyline because it was kind of, stacking up. The section was all about looking across the house, the house across the street, pinwheel plan, masonry that's laterally supporting this floating volume, which is plastered with a plaster that would change with the different qualities of light, which was like the desert patina or the desert varnish, on the rocks that would be black, brown, purple, silver, and oblique light. First project that is very low budget. It's gang nail trusses, wood frame, stucco. But there was this kind of big idea, this dialogue between the warmness of the interior of the living volume and a cool volume that was out here. This is some of the interiors, and then going into the pool space that you can see the cool volume, the warm volume. There's this kind of dialogue between the two, that view. And then this idea of dialogue, it's the title of our first fully monograph that came out about 7 years ago. It's a tome. It's a 10-pound book. It comes with like a luggage rack carrier thing. Anyway, it's like 6 selected projects, but it's called Dialogues in Space, and it's really kind of how I think about a site and a building, but it's a method of how I work. So a lot of times the epiphanies in our studio are through dialogue. So, I certainly sketch and all of that, but a lot of times it's about sitting around a table and talking about the intentions of a project. And it's also a dialogue with the constructors, with the client, and it's about listening. And so it's a kind of methodology how we work. On the west side of Phoenix is an early project that was a National Honor Award in a community that was the western version of Levittown with John F. Long, both John F. Long and William Levitt, and the houses in the distance you can see here. They both testified in the halls of the Congress at the U.S. Capitol about the Single Family Home Ownership Act, the GI Bill, where returning GIs could buy a house for $1. And he developed this kind of idyllic community, but it had seen hard times. He was actually involved in the bond initiative to get this project on this site. It was it was not a good park. There was searchlights. There was a lot of crime. It was the highest crime rate in Arizona was this park. And so anyway, it was about creating more presence on the street. There was a library at the back of the site, a small community center. Anyway, this is a 43,000 square foot kind of dialogue between the mind and body. So the exercise of the mind and the exercise of the body. So a 23,000 square foot community center and a 15,000 square foot regional branch library. So this dialogue between the programs is the most used library by terms of circulation, foot traffic, and by far the most used community center. On the back of the site where we saved a ball field, our masonry volumes, Integra again, the superlight plant was really something John F. Long helped create with his houses. And so that's the short volumes are kind of the small bits of program, then a pedestrian street that kind of ties all that together, intersecting with this promenade, and then big box volumes kind of target typical big box construction, but then clad in mill finish stainless steel, which is more about, it's more absorptive than it is reflective. It's also 40% less expensive because it's when they take the stainless steel pig, they call it, similar to a copper ingot, and it's when that pig is pressed into a sheet good, and that's the finish. And so it's 2B, not number 4 brushed, not number 8 polished. We cut it off the coil so it's 4 foot by 24 foot sheets hung like a rain screen with glass suction cups, and the idea is that the park moves through the building. So I approach projects, I would say, as an artist and as a historian, and it's about reading place. I've taught across the country, including 3 studios here at UT Austin, UT Arlington, and University of Houston, which are called Context as Material, how to read place. And context is really looking at everything about a place that might tell you something about what the project might be, because I think the first rule of sustainable design is good design. Design that people fall in love with, that people cherish. It works, but it's functional, simultaneously functional and poetic. So it's aspirational, it makes people feel good. You know, it's something we don't talk about, but I think it's pretty important. This is the Lightning Field by Walter de Maria, 1975. 400 2.5-inch diameter stainless steel poles on a grid 1 mile by a kilometer go. Another project I didn't discover Judd until after a while, after I built my house. I'm going to show a project later that we used the concrete consultant from Texas, another Texas connection, Robert Kirk, that told this great story about how these were actually built. I love these. I took students here for a studio, one of the first studios I taught at ASU. We went for the Marfa weekend in October, the bonfires, the whole thing, but we got out here, we jumped the fence before sunrise, took like 50 students out here into the fields, and then all of a sudden we saw this flash, which was the sunrise hitting these 100 boxes in those 2 sheds. A project that is in a different place is the field house, which is right in here. This is the last retreating glacier in America that created the Thumb, created Green Bay, and it's fields. It's a field house. My client didn't want CC&R, so he bought a crop field, actually, for dairy. So this idea that it sits as a kind of piece of utility in the field that kind of doesn't necessarily look like a house. We're against the hedgerows that protect us from the northeast winter winds. An apple orchard, which is kind of in memory of one of the last things my client did with his father. This is the north elevation, the west elevation on the right, the south elevation. It's kind of an instrument that is attunable to the environment. Screen porch on this end at the top. This is kind of going in and up this darker volume and up to the light. Kind of a split level barn, contemporary split level barn. This is the screen porch. The block was some of the best. It's like Carrara limestone there, and the block was the finest block I'd ever seen. And so we did this 1 mil run. It was a 10% call. We raked all the joints. It looks like stone, but it's just the cheapest block you can get there. Nothing fancy. And then clad in galvalume. It's actually reverse masonry veneer inside and concrete slabs to absorb the winter sun. But I love this kind of warm light of the home in this kind of glacial blue. And this is an upper and lower bath. The lower bath's on the left in the darker spaces, and the lighter in the top. So back to the desert. We're way up here in the edge of our desert, edge of Scottsdale, desert courtyard house. These rocks were here. They had like fallen from space or something. They're the only volcanic rocks around. So we were like, okay, we're keeping those. And there's a saguaro on my left. And it was a site that didn't have like this, like a lot. It was very quiet. Later you'll see this arrow rock. So here's some of that. Here are those volcanic rocks. Here's arrow rock that pointed to this kind of quintessential multi-layered Arizona sunset view. This one side was perfect for a fire, so we thought, okay, maybe we'll do that. This is the initial thinking, kind of, okay, this idea maybe of something that cracks open and creates, it's a courtyard house because very quiet clients that wanted privacy. So, courtyards allow privacy, access to light and air and serenity. And so it was about not seeing all the neighbors. Also, it was a site that you look down on. So we wanted to kind of fill the middle of this large house with the desert, so the mesquites come up into the house under a bridge. Some early sketches by Tommy Suchart, that was just lecturing at UT Arlington. Tommy was the principal collaborator with me on this project. This is pretty much all he did when he was at my studio for like 6.5 years. It was 10 years in construction. It was 2 years in design and construction documents. One reason is this long driveway. It was a site that was added late. It's a peninsula surrounded on 3 sides by 2 major washes. And this is this roof, which is 5 by 10 Corten, that wraps down in places the courtyard in the middle to reduce the mass of the house from above. This is the plan. It's a kind of Ngawa plan, so it's a loose collection of rooms around this, in this case, a glazed veranda, and then certain volumes that are in the base of the house section. The base of the house is a concrete plinth that is battered 3.5 degrees and then blasted, and it's the same concrete as this. So it's the same concrete slab that we're working differently. So on the outsides, we're sandblasting. Everywhere else, we're grinding it with terrazzo grinders, large, grinders and small handheld grinders. This is the fire pit, and then sometimes we're actually carving into the stair with a giant concrete saw and then polishing. And on top of that really good foot, which is necessary for rammed earth, is all of the excavation. It was very good soil for rammed earth. Not all soil is. We tested it, was perfect. And we got really fantastic rammed earth walls, but literally there was no import, no export of earth. It all went into the walls. And then we were kind of casting light and view as kind of artifact. This is from one of the washes that goes right, it turns right before the house kind of cracks open. So this is that moment. And even the cabinetry is monolithic, and it's about, it opens as a kind of a solid box. And so we designed everything in this house, all the door hardware, all the cabinet pulls, everything was invented. It just kind of went on until at some point the client said, okay, you need to put the pencil down. But he was pushing it, like the wine cellar. He's like, I think we should try something different. But at some point, it was, anyway, I love this shot because this is how quiet this is from all of the houses above, that, it kind of sits there, and then the landscape in the middle. This is where it cracks open. On the right is the garage door. I had a Harvard professor of history, Neil Levine, that took a tour of this, and he goes, it looks like a nuclear bunker. Which I like setting up that kind of dialogue, right? That you're not sure what this is, but then, it makes this a little more dramatic, coming into this private world. These are some very large pieces of glass, and anyway, we had some fun here. The glass of the Ngawa glazed veranda folds under you and you walk over the desert. All steel plate, 16 gauge, cold rolled steel plate ceilings everywhere. Rammed earth, so there's a steel canopy, the rammed earth walls, and the concrete foot. And the clients had mentioned they'd like to take a shower outside, so this 5-ton onyx door opens like open sesame to this private courtyard, the fire, another fire, looking out to Continental Mountain. Another project is Amangiri that we were doing at the same time as this house. This is a collaboration with Marwan Al-Said and Rick Joy. We were young, just starting our practices, and this crazy Austrian, actually a letter, he had talked to Bruder was busy, he had talked to a lot of other people, and Will had suggested he might try talking to some young architects that are just starting out, and he mentioned the three of us. He came, saw our work, and said, hey, would y'all like to work together on this? And it was a kind of dream project. Actually, I had been running studios that were hotels because I was into hotels is a kind of a learning tool to teach students about experiential design and how you design for experience. So anyway, we I don't know, somehow attracted this project, but it's a giant horseshoe canyon. And we were working over here on a feasibility study. Anyway, Adrian Zecca, the founder of Amman Resorts, he picked this one spot that we had never walked, and we were told this is the site. And we had done a kind of think tank thing where we had designed 3 parts, and then this then became a think tank. Kind of, only the good ideas win, and we designed everything from the big idea to the hardware to the graphics. And this is how you look at sunsets. You don't look at the sun setting, you look at it setting on the walls of the Horseshoe Canyon. And then this is the project, which is cast as a ruin, a kind of man-made stone, cast stone. It's cast in place concrete. And it's about the movement of the body in this space in lieu of wind and water eroding it. So it's interesting. I've learned that we designed a lot by narrative. We wrote scripts about what people might share with their loved ones after they left here, and it's the most gratifying thing is to get letters and see blogs where people got the script, but they never had the script. So they've repeated the narratives back to us, and the people that were paying for this, they didn't understand how you could build, the #1 hotelier in the world, Zagat rated, with concrete. You build jails with concrete. But it's amazing, people can get that. And this is, developing the concrete, all recycled form, 17% coal ash from the now defunct and decommissioned Navajo coal plant was repurposed into these walls. Sands and aggregates from within 15 miles away. There was a batch plant built on site, 6 concrete trucks going back and forth. 5x12 fin form, suppressed the form ties. And so it really is intended to feel like cast stone. The reason we used fin form is so that it reflects light. And so here is the sky in the upper left reflecting on the walls when you're oblique to the walls. And then the slide on the right, all the travel writers were writing that, the concrete's different colors. And the truth is, it's a glass finish, which is akin to the silica that is in these frozen sand dunes that lifted up, that created the cliffs, which are there because of this crusty asphalt that is on the top of that cliff that you're seeing, which has preserved that cliff face. So it was about casting the concrete in a way that it would work in a similar way as the silica in the sandstone cliffs. This is the plan which locks the main kind of living room, dining room, kitchen, pool, the piazza, the zocalo around this rock that points north, and then 17 rooms on the left, 17 rooms on the right, the spa at the most sensual spot of the site right here. So hugging this rock, you enter this way. You have no idea the resort, where it is, anything. All you see at the end here, and then you arrive in this cottonwood court with this 170-foot rock above you and 800-foot cliffs around you. So this is that 170-foot cliff. You walk up a stair. This is the artwork that is constantly changing at the top of the stair, the lobby. This is the view to the north. This is the view to the south, to the rock and the pool. And this is an early rendering to that north view. You're looking into Grand Staircase Escalante National Park. This is my photographer, Nick LaHoo, who showed up. It was there for like a day and caught a squall that was ripping apart the pool. Has this great time sequence of what created this place: wind, water, and stone, light, weeping walls. This is a camera, so as you move, it's all outdoor circulation. So you're never in an air-conditioned volume. You're walking to your room. You're going in between the privacy of your room, which is all about the kind of quintessential desert experience, which is a solitary one. And yet we had to break those bars and hinge them, and that became a camera. So as you're walking across here, you're panning the landscape. So kind of Western movies that were filmed here and other things are in the project. This comes from, you can guess, a branding iron. And actually the contractor that did this was Iron Megan, a woman that has a business called Iron Megan in Cortez, Colorado. These are the kind of super suite, the standard suite on the right. There's a kind of island plinth, which is desk, bed, couch. The smell of water, the sound of dripping water, your number. We couldn't afford the gates into the courtyard, so they became woven horsehair from the Spanish tradition of doing that, a do not disturb rope. So we designed all of the interiors, all the furniture, all the graphics. This is how we thought about that. These are the chairs that were lower than normal to get lower with the landscape, and rawhide. Again, the tradition in the West of rawhide. So this is a star bath at night on the left and kind of sophisticated camping on the right. This is the spa. And this is the interior of the spa, and we were getting a tour when it opened, and this Navajo masseuse told us that when she interviewed here and went into these rooms, it reminded her of her grandmother's hogan. And we were reminded of that narrative that we had, momentarily forgot about, that was the idea of the project, or the idea of this. And it was, the landscape, they're in the landscape, sheep herders all day, and their hogans were very introspective: family, fire, food, and a hole to the sky. And so, anyway, these are the ways we were thinking about this project, and it kind of just completely recedes into the landscape. And so we've done other resorts. This is, I'm going to really breeze through these very quickly. This is with Marwan Al Said. We sometimes collaborate. Marwan's doing a really fantastic project here in Dallas right now. It's under construction. I went to see it yesterday morning. This is on a very quiet cove north of Vancouver. Idea of prefab, Shu Sugiban when it wasn't too trendy. This is like a 13-year-old, 14. It's almost happened multiple times. A boardwalk very similar to other boardwalks around this. It's called Dark Cove, and this kind of camp at night. Another project that is just us, invited competition in Sri Lanka, kind of a contemporary interpretation of the Kandyan meeting hall in a tea plantation on a lake with about 5 waterfalls. Pretty amazing site. And this kind of very quiet, very vertical spaces. This is a resort above the Dead Sea in Israel, where we were going to bring the water up from the Dead Sea, which is actually done. And have you ever been to the Dead Sea? The hotels around the Dead Sea are not kind of gross. And so this would be a different experience. Actually, this slide is out of order. That's the Sri Lanka resort. Another one that it almost started construction. It was that close. Is the southern Petra, Saudi Arabia's first UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's if you know Petra, this is the southern, but it's around this thing called Jabal Ithlib, which is the mountain of standing stones. You can see this guy with a cap. I mean, it's like really like it's just a special place. Very long history, back to biblical times. So this is completely a plinth scheme. There were these isolated rocks that were not part of the larger mountain of standing stones. We decided to give these rocks a stepped plinth base. And even when you're on top, walking on top of the resort and going down into your rooms, it kind of recedes. And then you go down here and you enter the rooms. We were really struggling with this many rooms, and so this is the heart of the resort. This is the spa. These are the villas. These are the standard suites. And the idea, which is very common there, is this daria, which is walled courtyards. If you fly over the Middle East, everyone walls their site. And so this was a way that everyone can leapfrog over each other and everyone has the same view. So this is the window to the mountain of standing stones, and certain courtyards we wanted to have sand, and later at night there's a rug, and this is coming back from a camel ride in the mountain of standing stones and Hegra, or as it's known there, Madain Sala. And even from this angle, the resort is very, very quiet. And you go into that plinth. Another plinth project is a house in a hidden valley. We call it Hidden Valley Desert House, a 5-acre site, really great views to Continental Mountain, the same mountain you saw at the end of the pool at the Desert Courtyard House. But here, the reverse sunset is quite dramatic. And then this was this special spot on the site where the geology changed. It was a kind of pink shale. And for some reason, with that geology was a cholla field. So that inspired the project. So it's a plinth that is right at that level with a nice view to the distant city through this opening in the valley. And in fact, it's for a couple that was just downsizing from a 5,000 square foot house to 2,500 square feet. And they lived pretty much on this level. It's a mill-finished stainless steel canopy that's harvesting water and incorporating the photovoltaic. It's close to a net zero house. Pinwheels, so it's Take Me's central core in the Farnsworth house, and it's a kind of dispersed core that's framing indoor and outdoor program. They cook most of their, like at least one meal a day outside, so there's an indoor-outdoor kitchen. So this is a media volume, a meditation volume, a Japanese bathing volume, the central core, still, closet, and the plinth. And so this is that plan. All the doors open into those dispersed core volumes, so you can open up the entire house, and it's like living outside in fully shaded, fully programmed space. It's 4,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet is outdoor space, fully programmed, 2,500 conditioned. So this is that house, the stair from the garage, and the 2 bedrooms that are kind of workout and a study section the other way. Some details. It's actually masonry and concrete, some slab on grade, some concrete topping on metal deck, all clad in this kind of Verata plaster. It actually was, it's more monolithic than the concrete that we actually thought we could afford and found out we couldn't. The entry, looking out from the entry. The roof canopy kind of splits as a kind of gift to the entry. There's an aviary. The first 30 minutes with this client programming was talking about their pets, their birds, their koi, their Rhodesian ridgebacks, and their cat. Fabric ceiling inside and out, so you kind of see the hint of the gangnell trusses above. It's also very good acoustics. This is one of the ridgebacks. The mill finish steel. All the finishes inside on the main level are all dark finishes. It's about living in a shadow with these kind of framed views to the landscape. That it's actually very comfortable to be in a darker space in the desert and look out to that light. So this is kind of late afternoon in a winter, sunset from the master bedroom. This is the wine fire space, which looks to the city. This is where they would talk after work a lot, and so there are a lot of moments about that and that cholla field. Another little project is, it's kind of, I call an anti-subdivision. It's called Desert Smells Like Rain. My client owns a really large wash. And so it's kind of, instead of turning your back to the wash, it's about engaging the wash. It would be about farming, RV park, and then the wash runs through this kind of reimagining of this history that is there. I don't have time to go into it, but we're very excited about this. I'm getting to some of the last few projects here. This is a adaptive It's really a restoration of essentially the Eichler of Phoenix, Ralph Haver. This is, and we kind of, as a very small project, we're doing work, kind of all over the place. And we took this really like the client. It's these classic homes in the classic Marlin Grove and old Citrus Grove neighborhood. And we kind of innovated our fee and how we would work. We got a contractor to give us a price off of this sketch so we could know how much we could really do. This had been filled in. We found the original model through research, found this couple, Bob and Helen Winkle, that owned the original model. And the reason we had to do that is it was a real hack job here on the street. The light didn't work. I'm going to show these images. Okay, this is going to hurt everyone's eyes, I think, in the context of this presentation. But this is, it's like the light doesn't work, nothing works, the plan doesn't make sense. So anyway, we researched there were 4 models in this neighborhood. Some of it we just left it alone. There was a kind of new paint, the framing's a subtle color different than the masonry. Masonry, almost everything in the 50s and 60s, 80% of all things built in Phoenix were masonry. And so, typical thing, masonry, 4/8/16, concrete floor, carpet was an option. It's such a humble house. And, we kind of, put something of ourselves into this, but it was the goal was not to know. We actually contemplated reducing the square footage to the original square footage, but that kind of didn't make sense. So how could we keep that original, that expanded square footage? Anyway, this is how it feels now. My photographer, longtime photographer, walked in here and he goes, "This is just enough." It's 1,300 square feet. This is 6'8". This is 8'6". So they're these low tent forms. It's gorgeous. I'm so proud of this project. I love history. I love respecting the history of a site, history of anything that I'm given the opportunity to work on. And, we're proud that I think this, I sent this to a few people, and my friend Frank Harmon, he really responded to this, and this is the kind of service entry from this side. Some of this is original, this is new, so some of it you don't know. Some of the landscape was actually okay. This is looking from the hall, this is the guest bath, this is the master bath, which is about connection to garden. All the partitions are just translucent glass or back-painted translucent glass, the original floor, and this from the street. So I'm going to show you a few restaurants. This is actually something we did about 12 years ago, repurposing an old architect's and dentist office. We wanted to keep the old structures, so we needed to, instead of taking it out, we helped it out with this King Post Truss. This is the best Thai restaurant in Phoenix called Soy 4. And this is a project we just finished, which is a real honor to do a project at the Wrigley Mansion, 1929 U.S. Register of Historic Places. And this is the new Christopher's for a James Beard award-winning chef. His longtime girlfriend is the widow of Geordie Hormel, Jamie Hormel, and she owns the Wrigley Mansion. And it's kind of this rotunda, the head of the house, and these open arms that are on a slight radial. And we worked with that, created a new wedding venue here. It started as a restaurant, and then it grew into a new wayfinding graphics, a new drive, creating a new wedding venue. And we actually got this through historic preservation. It was a slam dunk, had to go through the HOAs, all this. because they understood that, you know, all historic preservation is based on the Venice Charter, which says that you do not imitate history, because then you dilute the very thing that you're trying to preserve. So our concept here was very simple, is to recede by day as a shadow under this historic eucalyptus grove. And then the interior is all dark finishes so that who you're with, your food, the Wrigley Mansion relit correctly for the first time in its history, and then the valley floor view as the star and the architecture recedes. So a section, daytime shot. This is the entry, which is these faceted glass planes in gray light 2, used to be called gray light 14. Some has mirror behind it, some has a translucent film. It's kind of reflecting always the city. This is a painting by the widow of Yves Klein, who happens to live in Phoenix and is a friend of both the chef and I. This is, we did all the interiors, custom tables, the services in the tables, customized living Divani era chairs with a back. So the entry is right there. This is the space in the day. It's really an evening restaurant only. Usually the shades are down all day and the shades across this skylight until service. The chef drew these for the plates. He loves cartoons. There's a little surprise under that lamp if you go here for dinner. Just mention the service is in the table. This is the roof opens, similar to a French restaurant that he cut his teeth in Paris, was there illegally, came from Phoenix as an Arizona native. Some views of the courtyard where the eucalyptus is, and back to the prep kitchen, a service bar. Actually, he loved this very famous work by Yves Klein called Leap into the Void, and got permission to reprint this for this project through his widow. That's going to the bathroom, that previous shot. At night, from the garden, and then all the doors open to the south, radially to the view. And then the blue hour leather kind of blends in with this magic moment about 40 minutes after sunset. The glass panels are reflecting the Wrigley, a kind of quiet moment coming back from the bathroom. And then the project with new ADA ramps, giving universal access to all levels of the Wrigley for the first time in its history. And, you know, kind of this is the star. Last project that just is nearing completion in Sedona. Helped these clients pick a site. It was the sleeper site. It wasn't for sale. We toured 7 sites and had this kind of iconic view to the Cathedral Rock, which has this kind of Mount Fuji-esque presence. You can't help but look at it, especially at reverse sunset. So here between the trees, another view to another outcrop to the south. This is kind of how we think. I go to a site, I spend a bit of time on the site. In this case, I was there at sunrise, at sunset, middle of the day, measuring all the trees myself because the surveyor had botched it. And I kind of write all these things that are coming to me that are my touchstones later on. This is actually working through the plan, and this is, okay, in-suite bathrooms, or no, the bathrooms are on this side of the hall, and all the bedrooms are facing south. Why? Because the house is a kind of camera or telescope. And so the kind of perceptual quality of the space is you're walking between volumes, you discover these are private, the bathrooms, the private bedrooms, and then the kitchen dining. And it was a kind of whole dialogue. They wanted to do a guest house and then later do a main house. And I said, look, you should just invest in what you're going to use now. It's going to be, we do something very small, very compact. And their idea was they're like early 40s software engineers from Boston, and they love the West, know they want to relocate out here. They come out here once a quarter, work remotely, and then they use it as they rent it out as a VRBO, so you can stay here later when this is done, and then it'll be their forever home in about 15 years. So this is that plan. It's about 1,100 square feet conditioned on the top, and a kind of basement activity room. The bottom, this is an early model. This is just the interior. We kind of did this kind of two-part Russian doll model. The lower part fits into the upper part, and the lower part is the interior, which is this kind of stepped rich light or inner lamb, and then the exterior is all very simply folded and lapped corten sheets in different dimensions. And this is the building wrap that is essentially the roofing. It's a Carlisle high temp 300 product that the corten's fixing to go on. This is how it's going to appear. The interior finishes are all dark finishes again. The floor, the walls, and the ceiling are a wrap that steps up and out to that view, both planimetrically and sectionally. And then something I've always wanted to do is that the window of the room opens entirely into this empty frame that you see on Red Rock Loop Road on the way to Red Rock State Park, and it's kind of this like abandoned kind of cinema for a moment. And then last few slides, this is my back alley studio. I own a building on Central Avenue, the main street of our city. Now the tenant up front is Modern Furniture, Modern Objects shop. They're the only Taschen bookstore in Arizona, and this is the front of that space. So if you're ever in town, look me up. Thank you very much.